The crystalline formations of Kepler 438c gleamed like frozen tears. Beneath the pale light of its binary stars, xenobiologist Nira Voss adjusted her environmental suit's oxygen mixture. As she traversed the moon's hostile surface, her boots crunching against the mineral deposits that had drawn the Terran Mining Consortium to this desolate place. 3 months into her assignment, she had documented 17 species of microscopic life forms, hardly the career-making discovery she had hoped for when accepting this remote posting. The distress signal had been faint, almost lost in the electromagnetic interference that plagued the system. Standard protocol dictated she report it to the mining station's security team. But Nira had learned to be cautious about involving others in her work. Her colleagues already whispered about the Ice Queen, who preferred specimen containers to human companionship. Being the only xenobiologist who had volunteered for this assignment made her an oddity, and oddities were rarely welcomed in the tight-knit mining community. Following her portable scanner's readings, Nira descended into a network of natural caves that honeycombed the moon's subsurface. The signal grew stronger with each step, accompanied by something else, a rhythmic pulsing that her instruments couldn't identify, but that seemed to resonate in her chest like a second heartbeat. Bioluminescent fungi cast eerie blue shadows on the cave walls, creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere that made her forget, momentarily, how far she was from home. The cavern opened into a vast underground lake, its surface mirror still except for gentle ripples that caught the fungal light. There, partially submerged near the shore, lay something that made Nira's breath catch in her throat. The creature was massive, easily 4 meters in length, with an elongated, serpentine body covered in scales that shifted between deep purple and silver. What appeared to be wings lay folded against its sides, though they seemed too delicate for flight in this low-gravity environment. But it was the creature's condition that made Nira's heart race. With a mixture of scientific excitement and unexpected compassion, multiple wounds crisscrossed its hide, some clearly made by energy weapons, others appearing to be from some kind of restraining device. A metallic collar round its neck sparked intermittently, obviously malfunctioning. The creature's breathing was labored, and a soft whimpering sound emanated from its throat, a sound so achingly vulnerable that it cut through Nira's scientific detachment like a blade. Her training screamed warnings about approaching unknown alien life forms, especially injured ones that might react defensively. The mining station's briefings had mentioned rumors of hostile entities in the sector, creatures that had allegedly attacked several exploration vessels. Looking at the wounds on this being, Nira began to wonder if those attacks might have been acts of desperation rather than aggression. As she crept closer, the creature's head lifted slightly, revealing large eyes that seemed to hold an almost human intelligence. They were the color of deep amber with flecks of gold, and in them Nira saw something that stopped her cold, not the mindless fury of a wild beast, but pain, exhaustion, and something that looked remarkably like hope. "Easy," she whispered, though she doubted the creature could understand her words. "I'm not going to hurt you." The creature's eyes tracked her movement as she approached, but it made no aggressive moves. Instead, it seemed to be studying her with the same intensity that she was studying it. When Nira was close enough to see the intricate pattern of its scales, she noticed something extraordinary. They weren't just changing color randomly. The shifts formed patterns that seemed almost like a language, flowing waves of hue that pulsed in rhythm with the creature's breathing. Without fully understanding why, Nira slowly removed her helmet, exposing her face to the cave's breathable atmosphere. The creature's eyes widened, and the color patterns along its scales brightened noticeably. She had read about chromatic communication in several species, but witnessing it firsthand was breathtaking. "You're trying to talk to me, aren't you?" she murmured, sinking to her knees beside the lake. The creature made another soft sound, less distressed than before, and slowly extended what appeared to be a sensory organ toward her, a delicate, tentacle-like appendage that glowed with the same soft light as its scales. Every instinct told her to retreat, to call for backup, to follow protocol. But something deeper than training compelled her forward. When the creature's appendage brushed against her outstretched hand, Nira felt a shock of sensation that wasn't entirely physical. Images flashed through her mind, vast oceans beneath alien stars, the warmth of others of its kind, Then darkness, pain, captivity, and finally, unexpectedly, a sense of gratitude so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "You're not a monster," she whispered, understanding flooding through her. "You're someone's child, aren't you? Someone who's been hurt and lost and scared." The creature no, she realized. The person responded by gently wrapping its appendage round her fingers, in what could only be described as a handshake. The color patterns along its scales shifted to warmer hues, and for the first time since entering the cave, its breathing seemed to ease. As Nira sat beside the underground lake, holding the hand of a being from another world, she felt something shift within herself. The loneliness that had driven her to accept this remote assignment began to recede, replaced by a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. This creature, this person needed help, and somehow, impossibly, they had found each other in the vast emptiness of space. She activated her portable medical scanner, grateful for the xenobiology training that had prepared her for this moment. The readings were unlike anything in her databases, but the basic indicators were clear enough. The being was severely dehydrated, suffering from multiple infections, and the collar round its neck was interfering with its natural bioelectric field. "I'm going to help you," Nira promised, surprised by the fierce determination in her own voice. "I don't know how yet, but I'm going to get you out of here." The creature's grip on her fingers tightened slightly, and the golden flecks in its amber eyes seemed to brighten. In that moment, Nira Voss, the woman who had spent her career studying life from a distance, found herself falling into something she had never expected to feel. For an alien being, the first stirrings of love. 3 days after Nira's desperate transmission reached the outer shipping lanes, Yarek Tal received the strangest cargo request of his 15-year piloting career. The message was encrypted, routed through 17 different relay stations, and paid for with enough untraceable credits to fund his ship's maintenance for a year. All it asked was for discreet transport of biological specimens from Kepler-438c to neutral space. Yarek had hauled everything from exotic pets to black market artifacts, but something about this job felt different. Maybe it was the tremor in the sender's voice during their brief quantum comm conversation, or the way she kept emphasizing that her specimens were injured and needed gentle handling. Whatever it was, he found himself accepting the job despite every instinct telling him to walk away. His ship, the Wandering Star, wasn't built for passenger comfort. The modified freighter was all cargo holds in cramped living quarters, designed for efficiency rather than elegance. But as he guided her into Kepler-438c's turbulent atmosphere, Yarek found himself making unusual preparations. He adjusted the artificial gravity to minimal settings, increased oxygen flow to the cargo bay, and even installed some of his personal collection of soft-mood lighting decisions that would have earned mockery from his usual clientele. The mining station's landing pad buzzed with activity, but Yarek's contact had instructed him to use coordinates for an abandoned research outpost 20 kilometers north. As he sat down among the crystalline formations, he spotted a lone figure in an environmental suit dragging what appeared to be a large container. Across the uneven terrain, Nira Voss looked nothing like Yarek had imagined. Her biosuit couldn't hide her athletic frame, and when she removed her helmet, revealing shoulder-length auburn hair and determined green eyes, he felt an unexpected flutter of attraction. But it was the gentleness in her expression as she spoke about her specimens that truly caught his attention. "They're not what you might expect," she warned as they approached the container together. "The larger one is badly injured, and the smaller ones are just juveniles. They've been through enough trauma." Yarek nodded, though privately he wondered what kind of specimens required such careful handling. His question was answered when Nira opened the container's viewing port. Inside, the adult creature lay curled protectively around 3 smaller beings, each about the size of a house cat. The adult's scales had dulled to a worried gray, and its amber eyes tracked Yarek's movements with obvious anxiety. "This is Yarek," Nira said softly to the creature, her hand resting on the container's surface. "He's going to help get you somewhere safe." To Yarek's amazement, the creature's head tilted slightly, as if acknowledging the introduction. The juveniles, meanwhile, had begun producing soft chirping sounds that seemed almost musical. "They're intelligent," Yarek breathed, understanding dawning on him. They're not specimens at all. They're refugees." Nira's smile was radiant. "I knew you'd understand. That's why I chose your ship. Your reputation for treating cargo with care preceded you." Loading the family aboard the Wandering Star proved more complex than any freight Yarok had ever handled. The adult creature whom Nira had begun calling Kes after the musical sound it made. When content required a specially configured tank that could maintain both aquatic and atmospheric environments, the juveniles needed warmth and constant access to their parent, chirping anxiously whenever separated. As they prepared for departure, Yarok found himself stealing glances at Nira as she tended to their passengers. She moved with practiced efficiency, but there was something more in her actions, a tenderness that spoke of genuine affection. When she sang softly to calm the juveniles during takeoff, her voice mixing with their musical chirps in an oddly harmonious melody, Yarok felt his heart skip. "You care about them," he observed during their first day in hyperspace. Finding her in the cargo bay where she'd set up a makeshift camp beside the creature's tank. "They saved my life," Nira replied, not looking up from her portable scanner. "Not directly, but they gave me purpose again. I was losing myself on that mining station, becoming someone I didn't recognize. Bitter, isolated, afraid to connect with anyone." Yarok settled beside her, maintaining respectful distance while still being close enough to catch her subtle perfume, mixed with the ship's recycled air. "What changed?" "Kes looked at me and saw something worth saving," she said simply. "When something trusts you that completely, despite having every reason to fear your species, it changes you." The adult creature, apparently sensing they were discussing it, extended one of its sensory appendages toward them. When it touched Yarok's hand, he gasped as images flooded his mind. Vast underwater cities with spiraling towers, the warmth of community, children playing in coral gardens, then darkness, capture, the terror of separation from family. "They're refugees from Serene Prime," Nira explained, seeing his shocked expression. "The hegemony invaded 3 months ago. Kes was separated from its mate during the evacuation. These 3 juveniles are all that's left of their clutch." Yarok felt something shift inside his chest, a protective instinct he'd never experienced for cargo. "Where are we taking them?" "There's a sanctuary station in the Vega Neutral Zone, run by a medic named Zena Cray. She's agreed to take them and help them heal over the next 5 days of travel." Yarok found himself spending more and more time in the cargo bay. He brought his meals there, ostensibly to help Nira monitor their passengers, but really because he'd become fascinated by the growing bond between human and alien. He watched Nira teach simple human words to the juveniles, who repeated them in their musical voices. He saw how Kes would only eat when Nira was present, trusting her completely despite its species' traumatic history with humanoids. But more than that, he found himself drawn to Nira herself. Her passion for xenobiology was infectious, her gentle humor a balm to his usually cynical worldview. When she fell asleep beside Kes's tank, after staying up all night monitoring a fever spike, Yarok quietly covered her with his spare blanket, marveling at how peaceful she looked. On their 4th night, as they sat sharing coffee and watching the juveniles play in their water chamber, Nira asked about his life as a freighter pilot. "Lonely," he admitted, surprised by his own honesty. "You haul cargo from system to system, never staying long enough to form real connections. After a while, you start to think that's normal." And now Yarok watched one of the juveniles playfully wrap its appendage around his finger, chirping happily when he gently wiggled it back. "Now I'm wondering what I've been afraid of." Their hands brushed as they both reached for the same data pad, and neither pulled away. The contact sent warmth up Yarok's arm, and when he looked into Nira's eyes, he saw the same awareness reflected there. "Nira," he began, but she pressed a finger to his lips. "After we deliver them safely," she said softly, "they deserve our full attention right now." The final day of their journey brought unexpected complications. As they approached the Vega system, Yarok's long-range sensors detected a hegemony patrol ship conducting searches of incoming vessels. "They're looking for Serene refugees," he realized grimly. "If they scan us, they'll take Kes and the juveniles back." Nira finished, her face pale. "Yarok, we can't let that happen." Without hesitation, Yarek began inputting new coordinates. There's an asteroid field about 6 hours from here. We can hide until the patrol moves on. That'll delay our arrival by at least a day. Kes needs medical attention soon. Then we'd better hope your medic friend is patient. As they changed course, both humans unaware that their simple act of protection had been observed by grateful, amber eyes, Kes began to sing a low, harmonious melody that its juveniles quickly joined. The sound filled the cargo bay with something that transcended species boundaries, hope, gratitude, and the recognition that sometimes love comes in the most unexpected forms. Nira and Yarek stood side by side at the pilot's console, watching. The stars wheel past as they navigated toward temporary safety. Neither spoke, but both understood that this journey had changed them forever. In protecting this alien family, they had found something precious of their own. Zena Cray felt the familiar ache in her crystalline spine as she completed her rounds. Through the medical wing of Haven Station, the neutral outpost served as a sanctuary for refugees from across the galaxy and her people. The Athrani had volunteered her services as chief medic when the facility opened 5 years ago. Her translucent blue skin rippled with bioluminescent patterns of exhaustion. As she reviewed the day's cases on her holographic display, the message from the human xenobiologist had arrived 3 days ago, requesting emergency medical attention for injured Serene refugees. Zena had immediately agreed. Despite the political complications, the Serene were renowned for their empathic abilities and artistic talents, but the recent hegemony invasion had scattered their people across the galaxy. Few had survived the systematic destruction of their aquatic cities. When the wandering star finally docked, 6 hours behind schedule, Zena was waiting in the medical bay with a team of assistants and a specially prepared aquatic treatment chamber. She had studied Serene physiology during her medical training, but had never actually treated one of their kind. Yarek Tal emerged from the docking tube first, his weathered face showing the strain of their journey. Behind him came Nira Voss, cradling one of the Serene juveniles against her chest. Like a precious child, the small being chirped softly, its silver scales shimmering with distress patterns. "Zena Cray?" Nira asked, and the Athrani medic nodded, her own skin flickering with calming blue-green hues. "Where is the adult?" Zena inquired, her voice carrying the melodic undertones characteristic of her species. "Still in the cargo bay." Yarek replied, "Kes won't leave the transport tank. Too frightened, I think." Zena's empathic abilities, while not as strong as a Serene's, allowed her to sense the deep trauma emanating from the ship. Without hesitation, she gathered her portable medical kit and followed them back to the cargo hold. The adult Serene floated in the modified transport tank, its scales a muted gray of fear and exhaustion. 3 sets of amber eyes the adults, and her remaining juveniles tracked Zena's approach. With obvious wariness, the medic stopped several meters away, allowing the family to assess her. "Hello, brave ones," Zena said softly in Galactic Standard, then switched to the few words of ancient Serene she knew. "Kesmel Harith, peace, healing, safety." The adult's head lifted slightly at the familiar words, and its scales brightened marginally. One of the juveniles swam closer to the tank's edge, chittering curiously at the strange blue being who spoke. Their ancestral language. "May I approach?" Zena asked, addressing the adult directly. She had learned long ago that treating patients with dignity, regardless of species, was the foundation of all healing. Kes's response came as a series of color patterns along its scales, cautious, but not entirely negative. Nira translated, having learned to interpret the basic emotional spectrum during their journey. "Kes is asking if you're a healer like the old ones from their home world," Nira explained. Apparently, the Athrani and Serene had contact centuries ago, before the Great Expansion. Zena's crystalline spine tingled with surprise and something deeper, a sense of connection she hadn't felt in years. Her own people were ancient, their civilization spanning millennia, but they had become increasingly isolated as other species developed faster than light travel. To learn that they had once known the Serene felt like discovering a lost piece of history. "I am a healer," Zena confirmed, addressing Kes directly. "My people remember yours in our oldest songs. We called you the singers of deep waters." The effect was immediate and profound. Kess's scales erupted in brilliant patterns of recognition and hope. The adult Serene began to sing, a hauntingly beautiful melody that resonated through the cargo bay and seemed to reach into Zena's very soul. The juveniles joined in, their higher voices weaving harmony around their parents' deeper tones. Tears formed in Zena's large silver eyes as the music washed over her. Her own bioluminescent patterns began to pulse in rhythm with the song, an involuntary response that spoke to genetic memories embedded in her DNA. For the first time in years, she felt truly connected to another being. The song of greeting between healers, she whispered, understanding flooding through her. My grandmother taught it to me, but I never knew its origin. When the song ended, Kess extended a sensory appendage toward her. Zena approached slowly, allowing the Serene to initiate contact. When their forms touched, she gasped as images flooded her mind, but these weren't just memories. They were sensations, emotions, the very essence of Serene existence. The joy of swimming with family through vast coral cities, the harmony of thousands of voices singing together, the terror of invasion, the grief of loss, and underneath it, all a desperate hope that their children might survive. I understand, Zena murmured, her voice thick with emotion. You don't need to be afraid anymore. I will heal you. The transfer to the medical bay proved easier than expected. Kess, now trusting the Athrani healer, allowed itself to be moved to the specially designed treatment chamber. The juveniles remained close, their chirping providing constant reassurance to their parent. As Zena began her examination, she marveled at the complexity of Serene biology. Their scales weren't just protective covering, but a sophisticated communication system, tied directly to their nervous system. The injuries Kess had sustained weren't merely physical, they had disrupted the creature's ability to properly express itself, adding psychological trauma to the physical wounds. This collar, Zena observed, studying the malfunctioning device. Around Kess's neck, it's been interfering with neural pathways for weeks. No wonder you've been in such distress. Removing it required delicate work with quantum tools. But when the collar finally clattered to the medical bay floor, the change in Kess was immediate. The Serene's scales blazed with color, and it sang out in pure relief, a sound so beautiful that medical staff from across the station came running to see what was happening. Over the following days, Zena found herself spending every free moment in the medical bay with her patients. She told herself it was necessary for their treatment, but the truth was more complex. In caring for this family, she had rediscovered something she had lost during years of treating trauma after trauma: the joy of healing. The juveniles, whom Nira had begun calling Pip, Melody, and Echo based on their distinct vocalizations, responded to treatment with the resilience of youth. But it was Kess who truly captured Zena's attention. The adult Serene possessed an ancient wisdom that showed in its expressive eyes, and during their healing sessions, Zena found herself sharing stories of her own people's history. My grandmother was the last of the old healers, Zena explained one evening as she tended to a stubborn infection on Kess's flank. She believed that healing was not just about mending bodies, but about connecting souls across the barriers of species and time. Kess listened intently, its scales shifting through thoughtful purple and gold patterns. Then, to Zena's amazement, it began to sing again, not the formal greeting this time, but something more personal, a lullaby, perhaps, or a song of gratitude. You're singing for her, aren't you? Nira observed from where she sat with Yarek, watching the interaction between healer and patient. The humans had remained at the station during the treatment, reluctant to leave their rescued family. Zena's own bioluminescence pulsed brighter as she realized the truth in Nira's words. Kess wasn't just a patient anymore, it had become something more precious. A connection to her people's past, a reminder of why she had become a healer in the first place. And perhaps most surprisingly, a friend who saw past her crystalline exterior to the lonely soul beneath. As the days passed and Kess's strength returned, their interactions grew more complex. The Serene began teaching Zena fragments of the old songs, melodies that resonated with half-remembered genetic memories. In return, Zena shared healing techniques that her grandmother had passed down, methods that combined physical treatment with emotional support. But it was during a late-night treatment session, when the station's artificial day cycle had dimmed, to simulate sleep periods, that something shifted between them. Kes had been experiencing nightmares, violent thrashing that disrupted its healing. Xena had tried various sedatives, but nothing seemed to help. "Let me stay with you," she whispered, lowering herself into the shallow end of the treatment pool. "My grandmother used to say that sometimes the most powerful medicine is simply not being alone." Kes's amber eyes met her silver ones, and slowly, carefully, it moved closer. When the Serene's head came to rest against Xena's shoulder, both beings felt something profound shift between them. Species barriers dissolved in the face of genuine compassion and understanding. That night, Kes slept peacefully for the first time since its capture, soothed by Xena's gentle humming of the old healing songs, and Xena, who had spent years tending to others, while carefully guarding her own heart, felt walls crumble that she hadn't even realized she'd built. Marcus Reed had always prided himself on his ability to navigate the labyrinthine politics of the Galactic Council, but the emergency session called to address the Serene incident promised to be his greatest challenge yet. As the youngest cultural attaché in Terran diplomatic history, he had earned his position through a combination of linguistic brilliance and an uncanny ability to find common ground between warring factions. Today, that skill would be tested like never before. The Council chambers on Concordia Station buzzed with tension as representatives from 12 different species took their seats. At the center of the controversy sat the case files Marcus had been studying for the past 72 hours for Serene refugees whose rescue had somehow become a galactic incident. Ambassador Thex of the hegemony delegation leaned forward in his mechanical exoskeleton, his scarred reptilian features twisted with indignation. "The humans harbored stolen property," he declared, his translator adding mechanical emphasis to each word. "These specimens were legally acquired during our pacification of Serene Prime." Pacification. Marcus rose from his seat, his carefully modulated voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "Ambassador Thex, the reports I've reviewed describe systematic genocide, not pacification. The Serene were a peaceful species with no military capabilities. They possessed abilities that threatened hegemony security." Thex replied coldly. "Their empathic manipulation could undermine our citizens' loyalty." From across the chamber, Counselor Veth of the Neutral Systems Alliance chimed in with her melodious voice. "The rescued Serene have been evaluated by our xenopsychologists. They show no signs of manipulation abilities beyond basic emotional sensing. They are refugees, not weapons." Marcus had studied the files extensively, including the remarkable reports from Haven Station. The human xenobiologist, Nira Voss, had provided detailed documentation of the Serene family's behavior, while the Athrani healer, Xena Cray, had submitted medical assessments that painted a picture of traumatized civilians, not dangerous entities. But it was the personal accounts that had truly moved him. Yarek Tal, the freighter pilot, had described watching the adult Serene comfort its young during hyperspace storms, singing lullabies that somehow made even the humans aboard feel calmer. Xena's reports spoke of ancient connections between species, of healing songs that bridged evolutionary gaps, of a being so gentle that it refused treatment until assured its children would be safe. "If I may," Marcus said, activating the chamber's central holographic display, "I'd like to present evidence that fundamentally challenges the hegemony's classification of the Serene as dangerous entities." The first image showed Kes in the medical bay at Haven Station, its scales displaying patterns of contentment as it sang to its young. The second showed one of the juveniles, tiny appendages wrapped around Nira's finger in obvious trust. The third was perhaps most compelling, Xena Cray, the reserved Athrani healer, sitting beside the treatment pool with tears of joy streaming down her crystalline features as she listened to an ancient song. "These are not the behaviors of weapons or threats," Marcus continued. "These are the behaviors of a family, a mother protecting her children, children learning to trust again. After unimaginable trauma." Ambassador Thex's mechanical claws scraped against his desk. "Emotional manipulation at its finest. The human has been compromised by extended exposure." "Then explain this," Marcus said, switching to a new file. Medical scans from Haven Station show that proximity to the serene actually reduces stress. Hormones in other species, they don't manipulate emotions, they harmonize them. They're natural healers, not weapons. A new voice entered the debate. Regent Kylar of the Centauri Union, her crystalline body refracting the chamber's lights into rainbow patterns, spoke with the authority of one of the oldest spacefaring civilizations. My people have legends of the singers, she said thoughtfully. Ancient stories speak of aquatic beings who could calm storms with their voices, heal psychological wounds with their presence. We thought them myths until today. Marcus seized the opening. With respect, Regent Kylar, they're not myths, they're memories. The Athrani have similar legends, which is why their healer was able to connect so effectively with the rescued family. As the debate continued, Marcus found himself thinking not just about politics, but about the personal stories behind the files. Nira Voss, who had risked her career to save beings she barely understood. Yarak Tal, who had faced down hegemony patrols to protect his passengers. Zena Cray, whose medical reports contained subtle notes that spoke of growing attachment to her patients. The question before us, Marcus said during a brief recess, addressing the chamber with quiet intensity, is not whether the serene were legally acquired property. The question is whether we, as civilized beings, can stand by while genocide is redefined as pest control. The afternoon session brought unexpected developments. 3 more delegations had arrived, including representatives from species that claimed ancient connections to the serene. Each brought additional evidence that the aquatic beings were not dangerous entities, but rather a crucial part of the galaxy's psychological ecosystem. Natural empaths whose presence had historically helped stabilize interspecies relations. But it was the arrival of Dr. Evelyn Chen, the renowned Xenop psychologist who had evaluated the serene family, that truly changed the debate's trajectory. In 40 years of studying interspecies psychology, she testified via quantum link from Haven Station, I have never encountered beings with such profound healing capabilities. The adult, whom we call Cass, has helped 3 different patients overcome severe PTSD simply by being in their presence. The juveniles appear to be learning similar abilities, and the risks, Ambassador Thex demanded, there are none. Dr. Chen replied firmly, unless you consider increased empathy and reduced aggression to be risks, in which case, I would question your definition of civilization. As the day wore on, Marcus watched the tide of opinions slowly shift. The evidence was overwhelming. The serene were not weapons, but healers, not threats, but refugees deserving protection. But he knew that facts alone wouldn't win this battle. Politics required something more personal, more human. During the evening break, Marcus made a decision that would either make or end his diplomatic career. He activated his personal communication array and placed a call to Haven Station. Nira Voss, this is Marcus Reed from the Galactic Council. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. What did you feel when you first encountered Kess? The xenobiologist's voice came through clearly, tinged with surprise. I felt like I'd found something I didn't know I was looking for. Purpose, maybe. Or hope. Why? Because, Marcus said quietly, I think that feeling might be the key to saving them. When the session reconvened, Marcus made his final argument not to the representatives' political interests, but to their hearts. Each of us has felt isolated, he began. Each of our species has experienced moments of profound loneliness in the vastness of space. We've built alliances and trade agreements, but we've struggled to build genuine connections across the barriers of biology and culture. He paused, letting his words sink in. The serene don't threaten that barrier, they dissolve it. They remind us that consciousness, compassion, and love transcend species boundaries. In destroying them, we don't just commit genocide. We eliminate one of the universe's rarest gifts, the ability to truly understand one another. The vote, when it came, was closer than Marcus had hoped, but decisive enough to matter. The serene family would be granted refugee status and protection. Under Galactic Council law, the hegemony's claims of ownership were formally rejected. As delegates filed out of the chamber, Regent Kylar approached Marcus with something that might have been a smile on her crystalline features. That was either brilliant diplomacy or shameless emotional manipulation, she observed. Marcus smiled back. Perhaps the best diplomacy is simply helping others remember their own capacity for compassion. Later that night, alone in his quarters, Marcus received a final message from Haven Station. It was a simple audio file with no accompanying text. When he played it, he heard the most beautiful sound he'd ever experienced, the voices of Kes and the juveniles, joined by Zena Cray and even Nira Voss, singing together in perfect harmony. As the music washed over him, Marcus understood why. The others had been so changed by their encounters with the Serene family. In their songs, in their presence, in their simple act of survival, they offered something the galaxy desperately needed, proof that love could transcend any boundary, bridge any gap, heal any wound. The diplomatic victory was just the beginning. The real triumph would be in the connections yet to be made, the barriers yet to be dissolved, the love yet to be discovered between beings who had thought themselves forever separate. 6 months after the Galactic Council's historic ruling, Talia Soren stood on the observation deck of New Haven, watching the sunrise paint the sanctuary world's twin moons in shades of gold and rose. As head of planetary security, she had overseen the construction of the first permanent Serene settlement in over a century. But her role had evolved far beyond mere protection. The aquatic cities that now dotted the world's pristine oceans were marvels of interspecies cooperation. Athrani crystal-growing technology merged seamlessly with human engineering, and Centauri energy systems, all guided by the Serene's innate understanding of harmony and balance. What had begun as a refugee camp had become something unprecedented, a truly integrated multi-species society. Talia's morning rounds took her through the floating gardens, where Serene juveniles played alongside young beings from a dozen different worlds, their laughter and songs creating a melody that seemed to make the very air shimmer with joy. At the Central Healing Center, she found Zena Cray working alongside human and Centauri medics, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with contentment as she tended to patients. From across the galaxy, the Athrani healer had never returned to her previous posting. Instead, she had become the sanctuary's chief medical officer, pioneering treatments that combined traditional healing with serene empathic therapy. Her relationship with Kes had deepened into something that transcended conventional understanding, a bond so profound that other species had begun studying it. As a new form of interspecies partnership, Talia, Zena called out as the security chief passed the medical center. Kes wants to speak with you, something about the new rivals. Talia found the adult Serene in the deep water grotto that served as both home and meditation space. Over the months, Kes had grown stronger, its scales now displaying the full spectrum of colors that indicated complete health. The 3 juveniles, Pip, Melody, and Echo, had matured into graceful young adults, each displaying unique talents that contributed to the sanctuary's growing reputation. As a center for interspecies healing, Talia friend, Kes sang, the translator, rendering its musical speech into standard galactic. The frightened ones who arrived yesterday, they carry old wounds that match mine. The new refugees were a family of Valdari, crystalline beings whose homeworld had been strip-mined by corporate interests. They had arrived traumatized and suspicious, refusing most contact with other species. What do you suggest? Talia asked, settling on the grotto's edge with practiced ease. Her relationship with Kes had begun professionally, but had evolved into genuine friendship, something she hadn't expected when first assigned to this post. Let me sing to them, Kes replied. Music speaks where words cannot reach. That evening, Talia accompanied Kes to the temporary housing complex, where the Valdari family had isolated themselves. The adult Valdari, whose name translated roughly as broken crystal, emerged from their shelter with obvious reluctance, their translucent form flickering with patterns of distrust and fear. Kes began to sing softly, a melody that seemed to resonate with the very crystals in the Valdari's body. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, their fearful flickering calmed. The Valdari younglings crept closer, drawn by the harmonious sound. When Kes's own children joined the song, adding their voices to their parents', something magical happened. The Valdari began to resonate in harmony. their crystalline bodies creating a symphony of light and sound that painted the evening sky in prismatic beauty. For the first time since their arrival, they were not afraid. "This is why we built this place," Talia murmured. Watching as two completely different alien families found common ground and shared music. Over the following weeks, Talia found herself spending more time with the growing community and less time on traditional security duties. The sanctuary had attracted not just refugees, but also researchers, artists, and diplomats from across the galaxy, all drawn by the unique culture emerging here. Nira Voss had established a permanent research station, documenting the unprecedented interspecies cooperation. Her findings were revolutionizing xenobiology, proving that consciousness and communication could take forms far beyond what anyone had imagined. Yaraktal had converted his freighter into a transport service, bringing supplies and new residents to the growing sanctuary. Their relationship had blossomed into a partnership that served as a model for human-human cooperation in an interspecies society. But it was Marcus Reed's visit that truly changed Talia's perspective on her role. "You've built something extraordinary here," the diplomat observed as they toured the coral gardens where Serene and Valdari children played together, creating living art from crystal and song. "We all built it," Talia replied. "I just make sure everyone feels safe enough to contribute. That's leadership, not security." Marcus pointed out with a smile. "Have you considered a career change?" The idea had been growing in Talia's mind for weeks. Her security background had prepared her to protect the sanctuary. But what the community really needed was someone to nurture its continued growth, someone to help new species integrate, to mediate conflicts before they escalated, to ensure that the delicate balance of interspecies cooperation continued to flourish. That night, Talia found herself at the central lagoon where Kes often came to sing to the moons. The adult Serene's voice rose and fell in a melody that seemed to capture all the sanctuary's hopes and dreams. "May I join you?" Talia asked, settling beside the water. Kes's head emerged from the lagoon, scales shimmering with welcome patterns. "Always, guardian friend. Your heart song has grown stronger since you came here." "Heart song?" "The music that lives within all beings," Kes explained. "When you first arrived, yours was disciplined, but constrained, like a caged bird. Now it soars free." Talia smiled at the poetic description. "I've been thinking about what you said about helping others find their songs, and I want to do more than protect this place. I want to help it grow. Help more families like yours find homes here. Build something that proves the galaxy doesn't have to be divided by fear." Kes's scales brightened to brilliant gold. "Then you understand what we Serene have always known. The strongest bond is not that which controls, but that which nurtures." Over the following months, Talia transitioned from security chief to community coordinator, working with each new group of refugees to find their place in the growing sanctuary. The Valdari became master artists, their crystal sculptures enhanced by serene songs creating beauty that drew visitors from across the galaxy. A family of gaseous ethereals found peace in the upper atmosphere habitats, their shifting forms dancing with wind patterns guided by Centauri weather workers. But perhaps most significantly, the sanctuary began attracting couples like Xena and Kes, beings from different species, who had found love across biological boundaries. They came seeking a place where such relationships could flourish without judgment or legal complications. The first interspecies bonding ceremony was a modest affair. Just the immediate community gathered around the central lagoon. But as word spread, representatives from dozens of worlds requested permission to observe future ceremonies, studying this new form of relationship that seemed to promise a more integrated galactic future. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Nira hadn't found Kes that day? Talia asked Marcus during his third visit to the sanctuary, the diplomat, who had become something of an unofficial ambassador for the sanctuary's mission, considered the question carefully. "I think love finds a way," he said finally. "If not Nira and Kes, then someone else. Somewhere else, the universe seems to have a way of bringing together beings who need each other." As if summoned by their conversation, Kes emerged from the lagoon with the three juveniles. now fully grown and each bonded to partners from different species. Pip had chosen a young Centauri artist, their combined creations reshaping the very landscape of the sanctuary. Melody had bonded with a human musician, their duets creating new forms of interspecies communication. Echo had found love with a Valdari crystal singer, their harmonies literally reshaping matter at the molecular level. 5 years ago, they were refugees, Talia observed. Now they're the foundation of a new kind of civilization. Not refugees, Marcus corrected. Gently, seeds, planted in fertile ground and given the chance to grow into something beautiful. That evening, as the sanctuary's various species gathered for the daily song sharing that had become their most cherished tradition, Talia felt a profound sense of completion. She had spent her career protecting others from harm, but here she had learned something more important: how to help others heal from harm, how to nurture growth instead of merely preventing destruction. The voices rose and fell in perfect harmony, serene and human, Athrani and Valdari, Centauri and ethereal, each contributing their unique gifts to create something greater than the sum of its parts. At the center of it all, Kes and Zena sang. Together, their bond a living symbol of the love that could transcend any boundary when hearts were brave enough to reach across the void.